Hello everyone and welcome back to the Wolf Pack. Now it's been a minute since we've done one of these kind of videos, but I feel like this month in particular is a really good month for crowdfunding board games, specifically on Kickstarter. So here are 5 of my favorite games that I am currently backing right now on Kickstarter. On top of that, this is not a sponsored video. I am backing these all on my own. So with that, let's get started with number 5, which is Veiled Fate Tribunal. So the first thing that grabbed me about this game is that it is a player count for 2 to 9 players. I cannot tell you how many times we are looking for a player count for above 6 or 7 that is actually a game without it being a party game. So that was the first check mark for me, which was this hitting that mark for that. Now, to be honest, I'm still a little confused about the gameplay in terms of like how it works, because what I've understood from it so far is that at the beginning of the turn, you are selecting a random demigod. And the cool thing is that each demigod has its own specific winning condition. Now that right there is what turned me towards the campaign instead of away, because initially when I heard like it's a deduction game, you are choosing a random god and you're trying to help your own particular god win. But like you can take actions for any demigod that's on the board, not just your own. So immediately I was like, well, if you can take an action of any god, then you're obviously gonna take yours. So how do you differentiate and make sure that the actions that you're taking are still hidden from other players? It's a weird concept, right? It's a very, very different concept. And I feel like there isn't really a specific genre that this game is hitting. I think that's why they actually are calling it strategic deduction in that sense. But one way to alleviate that point is that each god has its own winning condition. So I love that. And obviously they always, like Ivy Studio always puts on an insane production quality. As soon as I saw this castle that they put on Instagram, I was like, okay, what is this game? And I realized that it was Veiled Fate, but with the expansion and a bunch of new upgraded content. So production quality, they've already checked that from the beginning. I already knew they were gonna put on like the best production for this. But in terms of the content itself, okay, so what is Tribunal? Hadria, let's all look at the campaign page together. A jealous and vengeful god, Hadria reimagines how players think about earning and losing points, requiring deeper strategy on every turn. Now, as a backer, I might as well critique this page because I am actually backing this game. That has told me nothing. I have no idea what the expansion adds just from like reading that segment. Now, next part. Any player above Hadria on the score track at the end of the game immediately finds themselves face to face with Oblivion. I wish they were more direct with that, because especially coming from someone who has no idea about how Veiled Fate works, this expansion, like 2 paragraphs already in, and I have no idea what the expansion is actually offering. But aside from that, we do get to see our 7 asymmetric rolls, which I absolutely love. You all know that I love my asymmetry. So that right there was another plus for me. And then we also get to see some new stuff. 3 Titans, Roam, and Influence. Now, we love our massive monsters and gods on this channel. You all know that. I love that these Titans are adding another layer of depth of strategy to where you are sending your demigod to. So that's definitely a plus for me. And I was watching Amy and Maggie's video about this, and they were saying how like they can't even imagine playing the game without this expansion. And I can see why, because it definitely adds a ton more strategy that I would love to see overall. And some other non-essential / superficial things that I absolutely love is, of course, the deluxe city that I mentioned earlier. Okay, now look, I know I say superficial, but I can't even begin to understate how important that is to getting people to sit down and like turn on their brain and just be ready to learn. So it is a very important part. Like I feel like the deluxeification of board games, I obviously love, but it's even better for people, especially new gamers, when they can really interact with and be in awe of the table presence that they see. So yes, the games are becoming more expensive, but at the same time, it grabs people's attention. What can I say? And you would know this, especially if you are a teacher of board games yourself. We strive to get people's attention. And one way to do that is to have a deluxeified game. Okay, last thing I wanted to mention about Veiled Fate. We see here some gameplay, which I absolutely love seeing on the campaign page. This is actually the first thing I go to, aside from like, you know how they usually throw on like 300,000 minis, 500,000 wooden tokens. Aside from that, I skip all the way to what is this game about? Here it says Veiled Fate has a secret lineage, the part I told you about where you are drafting demigods at the beginning, and then you send them on quests. But what's cool is that you can send off any demigod, not just the one that you are focusing on. That part there is probably my favorite part about Veiled Fate. I love deduction games where you are in the minds of other people. It just gives me so much satisfaction to just play that Sherlock-esque role when playing board games. So I love the deduction element in that. And then lastly, we have God powers and we are capturing the throne. It seems like it's a very, very fun game for a big group of people. And I love that it accommodates up to 9. So that right there is my number 5, Veiled Fate. Now moving on to number 4, we have Super Boss Monster. Now, I did do a review about this game. It was the original Boss Monster game, but I actually didn't even know that there were all these expansions in between original Boss Monster and Super Boss Monster. And of course, you can pledge for whatever you want. You can have just the Super Boss Monster pledge. You can have anything in between. And I love this retro aspect. Like the theme is probably one of my favorite themes of today. I love that whole Super Nintendo, like old school 90s era theme of a video game in a board game form. It's very nostalgic and it makes me want to like play Mega Man X3 all over again for some reason. But I love Boss Monster because how this game works is that you are the boss of a dungeon and you're trying to build a dungeon together. The most fun part about this game is that you are drafting heroes to go into your dungeon. And with that twist, you also get to mess with other bosses and hit them with spells and hit them with other cards that will ruin their dungeon and break them apart, and also throw them more curveballs by also giving them more heroes to deal with. And you're ultimately trying to get your heroes, you're trying to kill the heroes before they reach your actual boss. So the concept behind Boss Monster is extremely fun, and I love how they've streamlined a lot of things. The player mat is so essential to this game because I feel like without it, it is just a card game, but now it feels so much more immersive when you have this whole town building. Like the neoprene upgrades here, probably my favorite part about Super Boss Monster. I love seeing this town center, and then you have your own, like each player has their very own individual neoprene mats, which I absolutely love. And one part I did find a little confusing though is that here it says command your minion. The new minion meeple allows your boss to command where they go in town. I'm not sure what they is, like they as in the heroes, I'm assuming. Because like I said, you're drafting heroes from the town, and as someone who hasn't played any of the expansions in the middle, I think there might have been some new update where you get to control exactly which heroes are going to your dungeon by placing a meeple here. Correct me if I'm wrong, and if you know, I would love to know the real answer to that. But I think the mini meeple allows you to choose the hero that you can play. Because originally, if like the hero has a sword icon, then you can recruit the hero with the sword icon if you have the most swords in your dungeon. So I don't really know how that fully works just yet. Would love to know more clarification on that. Aside from that, we also get to see some nice wooden heart tokens. I love how each neoprene mat is different for the 4 players. And I think they also offer like the one box storage solution, which is absolutely perfect because it goes from Boss Monster, which is like a super tiny video game cartridge, to now this huge Super Nintendo NES console. So that right there is my number 4, Super Boss Monster. And now moving on to number 3. Now this one is called Armello. Apparently it's also based on a video game, but this game, let me tell you now, it looks super, super fun. I was watching Monique's playthrough on this, and it really sold me on the game in a heartbeat because there's so many different things happening here. So in Armello, the winning condition is that you have to get 30 points, and then you will get the opportunity to slay the final boss. Or if you don't want to fight the boss, or if you can't fight the boss for some reason, then you can also get to 70 points. Now, the reason why this game really pulled me and why it's so interesting is because you have a mix of card drafting, and you also have a mix of dice drafting as well. So on your turn, you're going to draw cards, and there's just so many things that you can do on your turn, but you can basically play through your dice actions, and you can move across the map to complete different quests. Now, that's 2 things that are kind of worrisome about this campaign, actually. First off is that there's so much text. Like, I would rather see a GIF instead of this huge block of text telling me how the game actually works, because again, the very first thing I look for is how do you play this game? What is the whole purpose of this? So it took me a minute to actually watch through before you play this entire video before actually being invested into this campaign page. But I would love to see like the GIF of here's how you play the game. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But there's so much block text up here that I'm kind of just skipping through it. And then the second worrisome thing for me is the way you complete quests. So here when you're trying to complete a quest, you have to go you could potentially go extremely far in order for you to actually complete a quest. Like you have to travel all the way across the map, and I think movement is pretty limited here. So hopefully there is a resolution in movement or how you complete quests, because that's my first like semi-worrisome flag, in that I hope you don't take a bajillion turns for you to be able to complete quests, because that would suck, right? Why would you spend most of your turn moving across the map to just turn in a quest for some rewards? But aside from the negative on that, there are so many different positives here that I want to point out. So first off, aside from you having asymmetric characters, I love that as you're traveling across the map, each terrain has something unique and different. Some of them can boost your combat abilities. Other times you can actually visit a market in order for you to spend gold and then get shiny new cards. It's a fun way to like level up your character, because you're actually changing out your deck and adding new cards to it, and you can buy from the market. I always love those kind of systems in board games. And then you can also explore dungeons and fight. And these dungeons are full of different, what they call banes. I feel like those are the monsters of the dungeon. And it also increases your chances of gaining some different types of treasure and loot. Cards here are a major highlight, because aside from them being used for combat or actions, at the very bottom, they can also be used as bonus actions. And I love that ability that they've implemented there. So if you combine the card play with the dice play and that randomization element, I think it makes it look super, super fun. There's also a ton of different symbols. You have swords, shields, a sun, moon, wild, and rot. So many different elements that you can use and incorporate. Combat 2 is something I'm gonna look up a little bit more. I feel like this right here is gonna make or break my pledge for it, because again, we have a whole giant block of essay text that doesn't fully make sense to me in terms of how combat works, but it sounds really fun, because what they're saying here is that we first start off with 2 combat cards, and then they're going to add different conditions: dice, hit blocks, other special conditions. And then each hero is going to roll their fight dice. And it sounds like there's this rock, paper, scissors element, because you have different symbols that will cancel each other out. And you can also use the dice to add on different armello, which I'm assuming is your character, your unique asymmetric character, effects to your combat. And then right there, you're going to tally up and then have your damage inflicted back. There is no player elimination in this game, and that once you do lose, I did see that you discard your entire hand and then you roll a die, which will tell you where you respawn on the map, which is very cool. I feel like it's nice that we're drifting away from player elimination, because as much as I don't mind player elimination, it's not fun for anyone to just like sit at the table and watch the rest of us play. Like, I don't mind it, but I don't want that experience for other people that I'm playing with. I want them to all be included and to have fun at the table the entire way. But like, if I lose and I die in a player eliminated game, like, I don't really care. I don't mind watching them. I would just rather have everyone experience the fun the entire way. So I feel like it's nice in general that the board gaming world is moving or mitigating the way player elimination was originally seen before. So that's really fun. But yeah, for combat, I just love that overall it seems very streamlined. It seems straightforward without it being too like surface level. I feel like there's a lot of interesting depth to be explored here for the combat, and that's another big reason why Armello is my number 3 on top 5 board games that I'm currently backing. Now, moving on to number 2, our only, well, actually, I feel like it's the only game that I've seen so far anyways, but it's our only heavy Euro strategic game that is on this list for today, and that is Galactic Cruise. Now, this game just reminds me of like Lisboa and all the heavy Euro games. So just seeing it, I was honestly pretty hooked on as soon as I saw Monique and Naveen's gameplay for Galactic Cruise. There is so much going on, just like for Armello here, but there's so much more complexity involved in this. It is a classic, I feel like it's a classic Euro game, because what you're trying to do is, once again, we are in space. It's like I said, it's literally the year of space games. But this time we do have a Euro strategic game in space. Now in the space game, see this right here is what I love to see, because now, aside from just a quick short snippet of text, combines it with a GIF so you can see exactly how the game works out. Acquire new blueprints and build them into your shuttles. You then get to interact with markets of resources and special agendas. Then you get to build developments between departments to increase your action selection. So Galactic Cruise is ultimately a worker placement game with action selection, and I love that once you place a worker, you can activate multiple actions, and that's going to pretty much increase your engine. And then from there, number 4, schedule and advertise a cruise to attract the right guests that want to go onto your spaceship. I feel like this right here is going to be the most satisfying part of Galactic Cruise, when after everything that you built up, you send off your customers, and then you're going to reap in all these rewards from them. And then lastly, track your cruise's journey while gaining bonuses and unlocking upgrades. Probably my second favorite part about this game is getting all these upgrades. I feel like it's a lot of my favorite parts in games in general. I love upgrades, and I love getting different rewards once you've built up your fun little engine. And then last but not least, ultimately you're trying to do different endgame conditions, like with the company goals, and outperform your opponents. See, the best thing that I feel like is overlooked a lot when you are setting up for a game is that when you already have a tray full of the player components that you can just hand to somebody and then they're done and set up is ready to go and ready to play the game, anything that reduces the amount of time from you setting up to getting to the fun is always a welcomed addition. And I love that the game trays has the individual spaceship components and everything that one player needs in one tray. If game trays doesn't do that, and if it's like a different type of tray, whatever, usually I'll just set up on my own. Like before, in like the older games, I can't think of any on the top of my head, but like in the older games, I used to just put a Ziploc bag with like the color, and everything that color needs is in one bag. So I'm glad that this is getting streamlined a lot more too as well, because this is what helps us get the game to the table faster. So when you have little upgrades, not even little, when you have major upgrades like that, it's always something that's going to increase the amount of time that the game gets played. So I really appreciate that they're doing something as fun as that. Now, last but not least, my blind back for the day, number one, and that is Requiem, Downfall of Magic. Look, I love the world of Black Rose Wars. I have not yet played it just yet, and I don't know why I am so invested in this, even though I haven't played it just yet. But I just love the artwork. I love the theme. There's so many things that I'm just really enjoying about the world of Black Rose Wars, and I have yet to dive into that game, which is sitting right here. Soon, hopefully we'll get some gameplays in April. I'm very hoping for that. You know, we really haven't gotten any games played in February, March. I feel like it's just been so busy, but hopefully April is going to be a month full of gaming. Maybe like mid-April and onwards. That way I can do a April recap of all the fun games we played, because Black Rose Wars is like my number one game that I want to get played in April, and Requiem, Downfall of Magic is one game that I really want to back blindly because of what I know from Black Rose Wars. So here it is going to be a campaign game. They did label it as co-op, and usually co-ops aren't my favorite. However, I think this is going to be the solo game for me, even though I don't need any dungeon crawling games yet. And it's also hard too because Oathsworn is like my gold standard for combat, for cooperative games, for solo games. So to compare everything to Oathsworn right now is becoming increasingly difficult. But I really do want to see what Requiem has up its sleeve. It sounds like the leveling system is very fun. I feel like it's really easy. I also love how these characters are in the same exact universe as Black Rose Wars, and just the artwork is just insane. And I really want to experience like this. I feel like the darker, more magical fantasy type stories are the ones that I enjoy the most. So this is probably the next closest story to Oathsworn that I really want to experience. Now, aside from that, another green check mark that we always have, that is asymmetrical characters. Love that. There is an immersive story, but that is yet to be determined. We'll see how immersive it really is. And epic encounters. I love being able to build up to a boss fight. And the fact that we have that Oathsworn-like experience in the Black Rose Wars universe is something that I'm very much looking forward to. And here is probably my biggest interest, and that is zero downtime. The shared turn system keeps all characters constantly active and encourages players to organize their moves in the most functional way possible, while the narrative element fits nicely into the flow of the game without ever interrupting it. Now, even though I am going to be playing this more solo, it would be very interesting to see how this is streamlined across a co-op experience and how the zero downtime truly works. So I'm definitely going to see some gameplays before I fully commit to this, but I am backing it. I already hit back for this to begin with. So other than that, those are my top 5 board games that I'm currently backing. Let me know if I missed any games that you are currently backing right now, or if any of these 5 have interested you. I'll go and leave links to them down below. Again, it's not a sponsored video, all games that I am backing on my own. So with that said, I can't wait to hear what you all think about these 5 games and about any other games that I should put on my radar too. With that said, if you made it here to the very, very end, comment irresponsible for yet another irresponsible month of backing too many games when we have just a full shelf and a very, very empty wallet. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Oh, by the way, you know what I just forgot? I totally forgot that I also backed Roth very recently, which is ending, I think, in like 24 hours or something. And then I also backed Mythwind, but I also wanted to like showcase and highlight a bunch of other games too that I haven't talked about just yet, since I have been talking about Mythwind a lot. So, okay, looks like those are 7 games then that I backed in a month. Help me.